My name's Charles Bronson, and all my life I've wanted to be famous.
There are so many criminals in prisons around the world who have done terrible things, so it's pretty hard to know which one is the worst. But that's what makes Charles Bronson so interesting. The British inmate has been called the most feared prisoner in the world. That's a pretty bold claim. He's even had a Hollywood movie made about him, but we have a more accurate story of his life. So what did he do to make everyone afraid of him? How did he go from a kind and gentle child to a notorious criminal? And more importantly, where is he now? Let's take a closer look at the crazy life and crimes of Charles Bronson. The first thing you need to know about Charles Bronson is that his name is not Charles Bronson. He was born Michael Gordon Peterson on December the 6th, 1952. We'll get to why he changed his name in a moment. He spent a few happy childhood years in Wales and Luton in the UK. His aunt said he was actually a mild-mannered and gentle child who never bullied anyone. She claims he would even defend other children who were being picked on if they were weaker than him. The stereotype you normally expect with criminals is that they grew up in poverty or with a broken family, but that's not true for Bronson. His family were actually pretty well respected. His dad ran a conservative club, while his aunt and uncle were a mayor and mayoress. You don't get more perfect families than that. So what happened to turn Bronson into a criminal? His behaviour started changing when his parents moved from Luton to Cheshire in England, not too far from London. He was 13 and he joined a gang pretty much right away. After that, he started getting into trouble. 13 is a pretty young age to get on the wrong side of the law, but that's exactly how old Bronson was when he first got arrested. This time, it was only a minor offence. He'd been shoplifting with other members of his gang. After some more minor offences, he soon dropped out of school. He moved back to Luton on his own to start working, and he got a job in a supermarket. It only lasted 2 weeks because he got himself fired by attacking the store manager. It wasn't long before he was in court again. This time, he'd been smashing the windows of parked cars to see if there was anything inside to steal. But even that didn't get him jail time. The judge decided on a suspended sentence. You can bet he thought he was invincible by now, but he was wrong. He got a more serious sentence for the first time when he drove a stolen van into a parked car, and for his role in a robbery. He was only 19 years old at the time. It was around this time that he met his first wife, and she soon got pregnant. At the time, he was working in the circus. He was performing as a strongman with his iconic handlebar mustache. This life wouldn't last long. In 1974, just 3 years after his wedding, Bronson was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 7 years. His wife stayed with him for a while, but things weren't looking good. While in prison, he attacked 2 inmates. He was transferred to another prison because of this behavior, but he only got worse. There, he attacked another fellow prisoner with a glass jug. He was transferred again, but continued attacking other inmates and prison guards, and damaging property whenever he got the chance. One time, he tried to poison the man in the cell next to his. Another time, he attempted to commit suicide and then attacked the prison guard who arrived to save him. He was transferred to a shocking number of different prisons, and even spent time in solitary after he was caught trying to dig a tunnel out of his cell. But nothing changed. After a year, his wife got a divorce. Every time he did something crazy, his reputation as a violent prisoner grew even bigger. Even other prisoners were afraid of him. But it's pretty obvious why they felt that way. In 1982, he staged a rooftop at the infamous Broadmoor High Security Hospital prison. The second one was even more spectacular. It lasted 3 days and cost the prison almost $300,000 in damages before they finally talked him down. But he wasn't done yet. 2 years after his first protest, he staged an impressive 18-day-long hunger strike. He was transferred to another high-security hospital for the criminally insane. At his new prison, he stabbed another prisoner with a sauce bottle. By now, it was 1985, and the prison board decided to transfer Bronson out of prison hospitals and back into ordinary prisons. I guess that's probably because, after all those years in prisons for the criminally insane, psychiatrists still hadn't managed to diagnose him. But you might have noticed that according to his original 7-year sentence, he should have been released 5 years before, in 1980. What was he still doing in a prison cell? He was still there because every time he committed an offence in prison, it added extra time to his sentence. It's sort of the opposite of getting out early due to good behaviour. But somehow, that didn't stop him from doing more and more crazy stuff. He wasn't in his new prison for very long before he was put in solitary confinement for punching a fellow inmate. He was sent to another prison where he got the chance to attract more media attention with another rooftop protest. This one lasted 3 days and he caused $115,000 in damages. When he was transferred again, he only got worse. This time, he strangled the prison governor. That's a pretty bold move, even from someone like Bronson, who was put into isolation, but lucky for him, he was finally getting out. He had to stay in solitary right up until the final day of his sentence, which might not be the best move from the governor, but either way, it was 1987 and he was finally free. What's the first thing you do as a free man? Well, for Bronson, he knew exactly what to do. He brought a water pistol, modified it to look like a real gun, then hijacked a man and forced him at gunpoint to drive up to Luton. Obviously, it wasn't really a gunpoint, but the poor guy didn't know know that. Now Bronson was back at his favorite place, and he decided to get into bare-knuckle fighting. It was in that world that he got his name when his promoter told him to change it. It was him who suggested using the name of iconic Hollywood actor Charles Bronson, even though the criminal had never seen any of his films. He became infamous in the fighting community when he was challenged to fight a huge Rottweiler. He accepted and killed the dog during the fight. Bronson later said that was one thing he did that he regretted. It won't surprise you that he wasn't on the outside for long. On New Year's Day, he grabbed a gun and robbed a jewelry store to steal a ring for his girlfriend. He was caught, and just like before, he was sentenced to 7 years for armed robbery. He was just as crazy as before. His wildest move during this sentencing was riding through the prison naked and clutching a spear he'd made by attaching a broken bottle to a broom handle. He got out again in 1992, but it only lasted 53 days before he was arrested again. He'd been plotting another armed robbery and was caught in the act. While he was in jail awaiting his trial, he took the prison librarian as a hostage. He told police negotiators that he wanted a helicopter, a blow-up doll, and a cup of tea as a ransom. They got the librarian to safety without giving him his requests, but you can bet that stunt didn't help his sentence. He got 8 years. Now in prison, his new favorite thing to do was to take people hostage. Obviously, he enjoyed his time with the librarian. His next victim was a prison doctor. Next, he dragged 3 other inmates into his cell and took them hostage too. This time, his demands were a little more serious than a cup of tea. He wanted 2 submachine guns with 5,000 rounds of ammunition, an axe for backup, and a plane to take him to Libya. He didn't get any of it. While in prison, he was encouraged to take up art as a hobby. That turned out to be a terrible idea because he took his art teacher hostage for criticizing one of his drawings. He said he was provoked, but he obviously forgot that art teachers are there to point out your mistakes so you can get better. After that, he obviously decided writing was a better hobby because he published a book called Solitary Fitness. It's a guide on how to exercise in small spaces that he worked on while he was in solitary confinement. It actually received pretty good reviews, but apparently it does get a little weird in some bits. Where's Bronson today? Well, he's still in prison, but the laws in the UK have changed. While most trials over there have been in private, prisoners can now request that they have their trials in public. Bronson is the first person to request that option. He wants his appeal, which should take place sometime in early 2023, to be seen by the public because he believes he shouldn't be in prison because he never murdered anyone. There's a fierce debate about Bronson because of how many years he spent locked up, and some people agree with him that he didn't deserve to be inside for so long. I guess we'll wait and see what happens. What do you think about Bronson's case? Should he still be behind bars? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any of the best true stories.